that has engulfed Syria for more than 4 years has reached its make-or-break point. Russia, top ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, began airstrikes in the war-torn country on September 30th. This is the largest escalation the 4.5-year-old conflict has seen. Russian President Vladimir Putin insists that the intervention is meant to flush out the Islamic State and other rebel groups, but many observers say it is merely a bid to help Assad regain territory lost in the conflict. Opposition forces have said the majority of the daily airstrikes are not aimed at IS, but at other rebel forces, which the U.S. spent months arming as part of their $500 million Train and Equip program. While the U.S. maintains its air offensive against the Islamic State, Russia's new military campaign has completely overshadowed it and has raised concerns over Putin's intentions. Is he really trying to wipe out the region's greatest threat, the Islamic State, or is he only focused on helping President Assad hold on to his diminishing power? Our focus this week is on Russia.
Hello and welcome to our weekly focus. I'm Tal Heinrich. This is the first time Russia has launched major military action outside the borders of the former Soviet Union since the end of the Cold War. It started 2 days after Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke to the UN and called for an international coalition against terrorism to fight the Islamic State. But what really stands behind Russia's increased military role in Syria? Let's hear the analysis of Alexander Goltz, a columnist for the Moscow Times. Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
Hi. So what do you think is Russia's real interest in Syria, which is worth sending ground forces and operating from the air at a tremendous cost, probably?
I think there are as strategic and tactical goals for Russia. Speaking of strategic goals, first, it's very, very important for Mr. Putin to support Assad regime. For clearly, a Russian president strongly denies the right of people to get rid of authoritarian leader. He is sure that every leader is legitimate. So in his reading, all color revolutions, all revolutions in the world are the result of somebody's conspiracy, especially U.S. conspiracies. Speaking about tactical goals, this operation in Syria was an attempt to return to world community as a leader of anti-terrorist coalition.
And Alexander, what does the Russian public think of this intervention in the Middle East?
I think until now Russian public is neutral or positive to what's going on in Syria. Every day our generals report to public that they destroyed this or that target. No casualties, no problems, everybody is happy. The situation can happen in case somebody of Russians will be killed there.
Alexander, thank you so much for this interview.
My pleasure.
The financial crisis in Russia is still ongoing. It started as a result of the collapse of the Russian ruble due to the fall in oil prices and the international economic sanctions that were imposed on Russia following the annexation of Crimea. Some financial experts, however, claim that the worst is over for Russian economy. Let's hear what Dmitry Medvedenko, head of economic and business news service at TASS, Russian news agency, has to say. Hi, Dmitry.
It's a pleasure.
So can you describe to us what has been the impact of the devaluation of the ruble on the common Russian citizen ever since the crude oil prices started to decline and the Ukraine-Crimea crisis started?
Well, primarily the impact is that it's eating into the profits and into savings. We've seen a direct correlation between the devaluation of the ruble and the plunge of oil prices. In the beginning of 2014, oil prices went down from $100 per barrel to what we have right now, which is around $50 per barrel. Same thing happened with the Russian ruble. Basically, same values, 50% lower. Used to be 32 rubles per dollar. Now it's around 60, 61 rubles per dollar at the moment. So basically, what has is happening is that people who are receiving salaries, well, in rubles, despite the fact that they're spending in rubles, prices going up, inflation being pretty high, double-digit the past 2 years, 12% last year, 15% is the projection for this year. So their real incomes are going down, and everything that they could afford before maybe is not easy to come by with right now. But also, on the other hand, we have a bit of a gap in terms of balancing the budget. It's a 3% deficit, and that is being covered by freezing the cumulative part of the pensions to pay the current pensions of today, and that's causing some frustration with the population. But on the other hand, we don't have a social crisis. There is a very low level of unemployment. It's 5.5% according to the International Labor Organization standards.
Dmitry, how has politics in Russia, including foreign affairs policy, has affected foreign investments in the country in the past years?
Well, foreign investment has been going down, unfortunately. But that's easy to understand because foreign investment is usually directly connected with, well, politics. And therefore, if you have the United States and Europe imposing sanctions against Russia, then the governments are not welcoming investment or banning it, per se, because dealings with some of the major Russian companies like Rosneft, like Sberbank, have been put on hold, if not banned altogether, because of the sanctions. And therefore, we have seen fixed capital investment, for example, for this year. The projection is that it will go down around 10%. For next year, a decline of 1.6%. Well, easier than the current situation. But at the same time, we know that companies are trying to create deals and invest in Russia, but are not welcomed to do so. So basically, a lot of projects have been put on hold, have been put on the shelf.
And as you mentioned, the Russian economy is very much dependent on oil and gas exports. Is there a certain maybe attempt or tendency to try and change this?
Well, calls for such attempts have been voiced many, many times the past couple of years. And, actually, there have been some moves, some reforms in that direction. For example, the alleviation of the easing of tax regimes for small and medium enterprises, for example. Some of the very lowest levels we have in the world are in Russia at the moment. But still, the country depends very much on the energy sector. Around 50% of fiscal incomes comes from oil and gas.
In 2015, Russia was number 62 in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking, behind Greece and Tunisia. Tell us, how easy is it to start a small business in Russia nowadays?
Well, it's easier than in other countries and more difficult. Depends on how you look at it, because the main hurdle is, of course, bureaucracy. You have red tape. You have a lot of organizations and different government entities that you have to coordinate your launch of your business with, and that's causing a lot of frustration, obviously. But on the other hand, as I said, the tax regime is very benevolent to stimulate business. You have tax vacations, for example, for new entrepreneurs. The first year, they don't pay any taxes at all. I mean, that's... Well, I could say it's unprecedented. I don't remember any practice like that anywhere else. You have a tax of just 6% on profits of individual entrepreneurs. You have a tax of 15% for small enterprises on their profits, or they can choose to actually tax their trade turnover, which would be their turnover, which would be around 6%. So they have this choice. And as some of my fellow colleagues and young entrepreneurs have been saying, actually the first couple of years, if you're a beginner entrepreneur, a lot of those government organizations, they don't even touch you. But if you've already established a firm business, that's when kind of the red tape actually comes in, and that's when life becomes more difficult. But you have already the opportunity to hire some people to actually solve those problems for you. So it depends on how you look at it.
Dmitry, thank you so much for this interview and for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Tal.
And now let's see what else is going on in Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin marked his 63rd birthday in his favorite Black Sea resort of Sochi by playing ice hockey in the company of friends and officials. Clad in an ice hockey uniform in the colors of the Russian flag, Putin came out on the ice and greeted the two teams. The Russian leader showed off his skills in an arena used in the 2014 Winter Olympics, personally scoring 7 goals. The Russian president opened one of the biggest mosques in Europe, warning against the lure of jihadists as the government frets over its citizens fighting for the Islamic State group. Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas were the guests of honor at the unveiling of the 20,000 square meter mosque in the Russian capital. Lewis Hamilton has won the Russian Formula One Grand Prix in Sochi, taking a massive step toward winning the Drivers' Championship in the process. Starting second on the grid, Hamilton took advantage of his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg's early crash to move into the lead. The 30-year-old Brighton never looked back as he cruised to victory ahead of Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel. Russia's unmanned Progress 61 resupply cargo ship successfully docked at the International Space Station last week. The cargo craft was loaded with over 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies. In addition to Russian Progress vehicles, unmanned spacecrafts from Japan and Europe have delivered goods to the station. Moscow residents woke up last week to find the streets of the city covered in snow. Although it was too warm for the snow to settle, big flakes fell from the gray skies for several hours. People were seen walking with umbrellas and covering their faces with scarves and hoods. But some say they weren't bothered by the cold. Many said they were happy to see the first snowfall so early.
So last week, Russia celebrated its president's 63rd birthday. The #1 Russian rapper, Timati, released a new video clip in which he refers to Putin as his best friend. Another special commemorative occasion was the Putin Universe exhibition, depicting Putin in various heroic guises, such as Batman, Joan of Arc, or Sherlock Holmes. Now let's say hi to the British organizer of this exhibition, Mr. Lee West. Hi Lee, thank you for being with us.
Hello, thank you, and you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lee, can you tell us where did you come up with this idea of presenting Putin as different heroes?
Well, to be honest, I've just come back from Russia after spending a very happy and lovely time there for 1 year. I've managed to make thousands of Russian friends, and it was my chance to show Russia and also their president in a positive light.
But you know, such controversial portrays of Putin can be interpreted in both a positive way and a negative way. Is your message to the visitors of the exhibition completely positive, as you say?
Of course, yeah. I mean, all my messages are in a positive way. I mean, it's more about Vladimir Putin as his personality and his characteristics. Of course, I've just compared him to intellectual people in history, for example, Gandhi, Muhammad Ali, Sherlock Holmes, and just showed each part of their personality compared to Vladimir Putin, and just showing the similarities. And I believe it's not so political, it's more about, it's just showing different sides of his character, what some people obviously really don't know. And it's my chance to just try to educate some people, that's all.
So Lee, you are the organizer behind the exhibition. Who is the artist?
I mean, to be honest, all the artists, they wish to remain anonymous. They submitted it because they're part of the Vladimir Putin International Fan Club.
Well, Lee, thank you so much. You know, criticism or not, the creativeness is much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maria Alyokhina is a Russian political activist. You might recognize her name since she is also a member of the anti-Putinist punk rock group Pussy Riot. She spent 2 years in a Russian prison on charges of hooliganism motivated by religious hatred. And now she's joining us from Moscow. Hello, Maria.
Hi.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So the Pussy Riot are well known all around the world, and you personally are trying to promote different causes. Can you tell us what is the one thing you really hope to achieve through your global exposure?
I think the main goal is to drive Putin away from our country, focusing on human rights and independent journalism. After we spent 2 years in prison, we realized that we want to help prisoners.
How can you explain the fact that the Pussy Riot agenda is gaining way more support outside of Russia and not so much in it?
It's because I think all of the media are not ours. They are controlled by our government, and we don't have microphone to speak with people, but As I know, people who knows us and who support us, I know a lot of them. They have the same goals.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe to us what was it like being in a Russian prison?
You know, Russian prison is not so different than our life. It's the same. If we're talking about censorship, if we're talking about violence, prison, you know, really similar.
Maria, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you all for focusing with us on Russia. We hope to see you again next week when we focus on another country.